Alright, this is going to be my Glock 19 Gen 6 2000 round review. Yeah, this video was compiled, it was taken, I had to edit it 3 different times. I don't have fancy cameras. There is some shooting footage at the end if you want to see that. Like I said, I don't have fancy cameras, so you get what you get. I'm just the dude who bought one just to try it out, and I'm just documenting what happened. Alright, so today we're going to talk about the Glock Gen 6 again. Yesterday I went over 2,000 rounds and everything is good to go with this pistol. I have only had 3 failures to feed, and those were all magazine related. In one case, it was this old Glock 17 size 10 rounder that I picked up at a gun show, already well used, and this thing has problems almost every time I take it to the range. It's just something I keep it in the rotation so that I get a little practice at clearing problems. And same with this one. I had 2 failures to lock open on empty with this in these 2,000 rounds. One yesterday and one a couple range trips before. This is an original Gen 2 Glock 19 magazine. It even says law enforcement only on the back. That's how old this thing is. It's from the the 1990s gun ban type stuff. It's well worn. It works fine in my actual Gen 2 Glock, but in the Gen 6 it doesn't lock open. Alright, I've been doing a lot of this testing has been done using the Metgar mags. I have plenty of the full-size ones that are for the Glock 17. They just stick out a little bit. These hold 18 rounds. And I only had 1 failure to feed with these, and in all the Glocks that I've, between the Gen 6 and my other Glocks, I've put thousands of rounds through these things, and I've only ever had 1 problem. Not this particular mag, that mag in question. I put a piece of tape on the bottom and colored it red. And since that happened, which was a few hundred rounds ago, I've used that mag several more times. Not a problem. It's just, mechanical devices sometimes fail every once in a while. But I think in all the thousands of rounds I've put through these type of mags, having only 1 failure to feed, it just got stuck like midway up the thing, like it didn't, the spring wasn't, sending it to the top all the way. I don't know why, but it hasn't experienced the same problem again. So anyway, and it was one of these full-size ones. Now recently Metgar has come out with flush fit 15 rounders for the Glock 19 size guns, whether it be a Glock 19, a PSA Dagger, Ruger RXM, what have you. And they're good, and so far so good with these. I have 4 of them, and I've been running them for a while now. They don't have nearly as many rounds through them as my full-size ones, but I have yet to experience any problems. I even have a 10-rounder one that has run perfectly fine in several Glock 19s. I've tried it in the Gen 6 Glock 19, Gen 4, and the Gen 2. And I think I even ran 1 or 2 rounds through some Glock 26s. So, the Metgar metal Glock mags, I would trust these. With duty carry or with concealed carry, they're good. I like them. They don't fall out of the gun or any of that stuff. Now, a magazine, before we get started talking about the Glock, a new magazine that I tried, I picked this up at Cabela's. They only had the 1, so I got a sample size of 1. This is an ETS mag. It is got metal feed lips on it, kind of like how There's AR-15 mags that I can't remember the name of off the top of my head that have that similar. Oh, Lancers. It reminds me of the Lancer mags for ARs. Now, ETS has a spotty history in their magazine manufacturing. I've tried a few of them. And see here, I had a SIG 320 for about a minute before I decided I didn't like it. That was 3 years ago or so. And that thing, the ETS, I had a couple ETS mags for it, like 15 rounders. It was a compact. They ran fine, but then I only got a chance to take it to the range a couple of times, and so they didn't get tested out. I have a single stack ETS mag 7 rounder for my Smith & Wesson Shield. It started its history working just fine, but lately has not been working fine. So be warned. And this thing here, I loaded it up 5 times during the shooting session yesterday and ran it, and no problems whatsoever with this ETS magazine. This is a full size for a Glock 17, and it holds 17 rounds, and it did the job. Now, whether that will hold out over long term, oh, that's another matter. I'm thinking not. I'm thinking it won't last as long as the actual Glock OEM mag, or even these Metgars. I have a feeling these Metgars are gonna go the distance. These are gonna be, like years later, these are still gonna be working great, just like the Glock mags do. That's just my gut feeling. I don't have it here with me, but I have a Strike Industries Glock 19 mag that looks very much like an ETS mag. It's just it has less clarity. It's a little more foggy on the plastic. It's still see-through, but it's a little more foggier. And the ETS mag, so far so good. I've used it, I don't know how many. I mean, I've probably run like 500 rounds through that thing between various pistols, and it's still going good. It doesn't seem very strong though. Like, I feel like if I lightly dropped it on the floor, it might break. It doesn't seem that strong. But as far as just loading it up and working it and running at the range, the Strike Industries Glock 19 mag works fine. Now, the Glock Gen 6 Model 19. It's a good gun. I had my doubts going in. I got this I wanted to see what was what, because I like the Gen 4 Glock 19. I like my Gen 2 Glock 19. Particularly I like the Gen 4. The Gen 4 has been my favorite. I had a Gen 5 one for a little while. I just didn't like it that much. I mean, it worked okay and all that. It's just, the feel, the ergos, it just wasn't working for me. Gen 3s, they're okay, but I prefer the Gen 4. But this Gen 6, I'm liking it. We've got 2,000 rounds in this gun. Now, yesterday, before I started shooting, I was at 1,700 rounds. And I decided, you know what, we're going to put her over 2,000 today. So I loaded up enough magazines to get me, another 300. And then when I was out at the range, even though I knew I was going to break 300, I took another magazine's worth to put in the ETS mag to, get me even further over 300. And I just, took some rounds away from another gun I was going to shoot yesterday. So far, so good. I mean, I had 2 light primer strikes in my 1,000 round shooting session that I did, early on with the gun, and those were from cheap ammo. I was running some very cheap, crappy, reload ammo. So I haven't had that happen again, whether it be factory ammo or some other reloads that I've had. But so I'm gonna check. So the problems I've had. Failure to lock open. 2 failures to lock open, 1 failure to feed, and 2 light primer strikes. Those were all ammo or mag related. So the gun is running 100%. It's good. For those of you not familiar, they have made some changes. You now have this gas pedal doohickey in here, which I don't like the look of. I think it looks ugly, but whatever. And sometimes I put my thumb there, sometimes I don't. I'm not addicted to the thumbs forward position. Now they have this divot in here. They still have that like they do on the older Glocks. Let me grab a. Here's a Gen 4. You know, that marksman position or whatever that they started with the Gen 3s. You know, for import reasons. That's still there. It's just harder to see because they got all the texturing up in there. And let's see, what else is they got a flat face trigger, which is pretty good. It's a little mushy, and it's a Glock trigger. I mean, I like the feel of it, you know, being more flat faced on here, but it's still that typical mushy Glock trigger, particularly that you're familiar with from the Gen 5s. They just kind of carried it on. Your slide serrations, they're a little deeper, particularly at the top, so you can get a little better grip on your slide serrations. So there's that. All of them come with an optics plate. I have not explored the optics plate yet. I know initially I said I probably wouldn't, but I decided, you know what? Someday I may have to pick up somebody else's gun that's got an optic on it and get busy with it. So I should become at least familiar, at least passingly familiar with using a red dot optic on a gun. So I'm going to find a low-cost optic and drop it on this gun, and, you know, learn how to use a red dot optic so that I can be good with one. It's not going to become a habit or anything. Frankly, almost all my guns, you know, don't have a optic set up, and I'm not willing to pay to have them milled out and have all that installed on there. But since this gun comes with the, you know, optic setup already, yeah, we'll find something that doesn't cost a freaking arm and a leg, and we'll drop it on there and we'll give it a whirl. Also, speaking of the optic, it's not the MOS. This is not your MOS optic. So the previous, you know, stuff won't fit. This is a totally different system, and you can see they've made a change in the extractor. You see the Gen 4 extractor, and we're back. All right, so the extractor, we're gonna have to do an edit. The Gen 4 extractor, you see how it's shorter than it is. You know, you got a lot more going on with the Gen 6. Now, what they were having problems when they had the MOS system on the older guns. They were having problems in some cases with some optics. The optic screws would get down into the extractor channel and interfere with the operation of the extractor. So with the new system, they've you know, I don't know exactly how it works, but you know, they have done something different in here, and that doesn't happen to it anymore. You can see it even goes back into the slide serration there a little bit, but yeah, so that doesn't happen anymore. You still got your two-sided you know, slide release like you do on the Gen 5s. You've got an extended beaver tail compared to the older guns. You know, see, here's the Gen 4, and you see the definite difference. It still comes with a couple of back straps if you want to do that. I'm fine with it in standard size. There's palm swells. They're not huge, but there are palm swells. You definitely feel them. The magazine well is flared out just you know, a bit more, like, you know, like they didn't really have a magazine well going on with the Gen 4, and then with the Gen 5 they flared things out just a tiny bit, and now they flared them out again just a little bit more. Not much, and it doesn't interfere with the usage of any of the Glock mags. So there we go. Now I ran, and we're going to show some footage later with me at the range doing my 1,000 round quote-unquote burn down. I hate using that word. I wasn't trying to burn the gun down. When I first got the gun, and the video's already up, my initial impressions, I got it at one of my local gun stores. I went straight to the range, borrowed some lube from the range, and lubed up a few spots. Didn't take the gun down, but lubed up a few key spots that you lube up on a Glock, and ran like 120 rounds through it, like 100 rounds of hardball and like 20 rounds of full metal or hollow point, and it ran fine. It ran perfectly, and that was with complete stock, right out of the box. All I did to it was lube it up, and it ran great. And then the next day, I loaded up, and we're gonna roll in a picture later, and it's probably gonna be the thumbnail. We're gonna. I loaded up 1,000. I have so many Glock mags that I was able to load 1,011 rounds of 9mm ammo of various sorts. All 115, 124s, 147s, full metal jacket, hollow point, flat nose, round nose, all that stuff. Reloads, factory, everything. And I loaded up 1,011 rounds and went to the range the next day. After having cleaned it, I got the the copper colored jizz that frickin' Glock puts inside their guns. Cleaned that out. Cleaned it, lubed it properly, and took it to the range and had 1,000 round session. Now I had 2 other guns with me, and rather than just shooting this over and over and over, I would give it a break every once in a while and shoot a few mags with one of the other guns I had brought with me. So I had a reasonable 1,000 round shooting session with this. I didn't try to do stupid stuff with it. I didn't throw it at the floor or try to cock it off of a fence or frickin' do stupid shit with it like fucking trench grenade would. I did what somebody could reasonably expect from while shooting it. And it's not really reasonable unless you're like some kind of competition shooter. Running 1,000 rounds in one session is not particularly reasonable because most people aren't going to do that. They're going to run a few mags. They're going to run a couple, maybe 100 or a couple hundred, and then that's their shooting session, which is sufficient for average maintenance of shooting skills. So, and is typical of the kind of wear that you're going to get from this gun. So, but it ran great. Yeah, it got a little hot. But that's why we gave it a break once in a while. That was run in complete stock configuration at the time. It had everything was, every little part was stock. The sights, the freaking slide releases, everything. Oh yeah, speaking of parts, like you no longer need to get an extended takedown catch anymore because Glock has divoted this thing in even deeper so that you can get a good grip on the takedown without having to buy an extended piece. So that's very nice. That's a nice touch. I wish they had the 1913 rail on here. They're still using that stupid Glock whatever, which a lot of lights and other accessories you have to use it like a separate little adapter part to make it fit Glocks, or maybe it comes fitted for Glocks because they're so popular, but then you have to take it out and swap it out for something to use it with a 1913 rail. It's like, man, just put a standard 1913 rail underneath the gun like every other pistol does, and we'll be fine. And they went back to a single stack guide rod, like this one. I think this is for a Glock 17, so it's not long. It's too long for this gun, but it's like this. They went back to that. Now that they're only running 9mm out of this frame, they decided they don't need the heavier duty recoil spring, and it works just fine. Yep. Now, after I hit the 1,300 round mark, I had my Glock guy add a couple things on here. We've got I got a tritium front sight with blacked out rear on here now instead of the normal Glock sights, and I had extended slide release buttons put on. They work really good. I like them. Now these are Glock OEM ones, and these are from the Gen 5 era, and oh, what do you know, they work, you know, on the Gen 6. So yeah, it's a good gun. 2,000 rounds. It was great. Yeah, I was doing some target shooting. I was doing some long range, some short range. I did. I got the gun pretty hot, you know, towards the end there because I was running drills with my AR, and you know, I was alternating between rifle and pistol. And this makes a good gun for that. You know, this is a good, you know, this is a good backup gun. If you're in a situation where, you know, your main's going to be, you know, a long gun of some sort, this is a good sidearm. I, you know, trust this gun now. You know, this is, you know, like I said, I had my doubts going in after the debacle that was the Gen 5, or not the Gen 5, the Gen V, I should say. Yeah, the Gen V was like, come on, man, that never should have happened. You know, they obviously, considering how soon they released the Gen 6 after the Gen V, obviously this was in the pipes. They just, you know, all that debacle with, you know, stopping the production of the older guns like this, and the, you know, the Gen V and all that never should have happened. They just should have said, yeah, we're gonna have the Gen 6 pretty soon, just, you know, just wait. And yeah, it runs good. I mean, I like it. Now, I don't, you know, like, as far as aesthetics, yeah, it's fine. I mean, like, I prefer a gun with no front slide serrations. Call me weird, but yeah, that's how I prefer it. Like on the 19X, and you can still run that. You know, you can still run it from the slide without front slide serrations. Oh look, oh yeah, it's so hard to do. Oh, yeah, yeah. I'm sitting here, I'm thinking, you know, just like, don't be a pussy. All right, so yeah, I may change out this guide rod after not too long, because I usually prefer a metal guide rod to add a little bit of front end weight to reduce muzzle flip a tad on most of my pistols. So yeah, we're gonna see. But so far so good. It's running great. Like I said, I'm gonna get an optic and learn the way of the optic, just so that, you know, I am familiar and used to using optics if I need to use them. You know, I'm not going to go switching all my pistols out to using optics. I'll probably just keep it on this one, and not even keep it on there all the time, probably. I have one other gun that has an optics plate, and that's I have a Shield Plus that I got from Rural King. It's the bronze Rural King exclusive. It's got a optics plate on it, but it's, you know, that's a lot smaller gun. It's a lot thinner, so that one would require an entirely different optic, you know, so that it doesn't stick out the side. And that's another thing. If I do get an optic, I don't want anything that sticks out from the sides. I want it covered and aligned. Yeah, my Marine Corps background comes out right there. I want it covered and aligned. I want it, you know, I don't want the optic to be any wider than the width of the slide. Otherwise, it just looks unkempt. Now, yeah, so I gotta knock this video off, and we're gonna have some footage from the shooting after I get done talking here. And yeah, if you're deciding on whether or not you want to, you know, get a Glock Gen 6, you know, do it. I mean, it's a good gun. It's a good gun. It works. Oh yeah, your magazine release sticks out a little bit more than it did on the Gen 5s and Gen 4s. It's the same style, but it looks like it's, you know, extended a little bit more. Now, whether or not it's an actual extended mag release, or if it just looks more extended because they rounded out the front of the front strap there, and just kind of relieved it that way. Anyway, that's another thing too. You have, like on your Gen 4 here, it's very blocky, very squared. With your Gen 6, things are more rounded. So the ergos are a little different, a little better. Oh yeah, here's another thing too, is I thought the grip texture, it's okay. It's more aggressive than the Gen 5 and the Gen 4 grip textures, but it's still not super aggressive. But at the same time, it's more aggressive than I liked, which I didn't really notice until I was shooting another shooting session, and I was shooting an older Gen 4 that I have, and that had been a law enforcement trade-in, and it was worn down, and I was like, wow, I like this better than the other. And then I shot this, and this Gen 4 is actually new old stock that I purchased recently from AIM Surplus, or not so much recent, several months ago, but still, it was new old stock, unissued Gen 4. So the all the grip texture was very fresh and all that. So you can knock that down a bit if you want. If you like that nice worn in feel, and all that. I was just take this thing. I used to use this metal punch. Anything will do. It's metal, the side of a screwdriver, whatever, and you can just like tap it, all around here, and maybe rub it like this, and you'll just ever so slightly wear down the grip texture pylons a little bit, and then it won't be quite so sharp if you don't like it, how sharp they are. So that's what I did to get it to my preferred comfort level. That's one of the I prefer in the Smith & Wesson M&Ps, I prefer the Gen 1s because I like the softer grip texture better than the one that's on the Gen 2s, which is like aggressive sandpaper to me. Anyway, so yeah, Glock Gen 6 Model 19. I'm not gonna get the 17, and I'm not gonna get the Model 45 because I don't need those. I didn't actually need this gun either, but I wanted to try it, and I figured this one would be the most useful overall because I can use the longer mags and the regular size mags for it. So, and it was what they had in my local shop. When I went in there, I said, all right, we'll get that. We're gonna give it a whirl and see what happens. It was a successful whirl. It's a good gun. It's reliable. Shoots nice. Yeah. Now, if you're a Glock hater and you don't like Glocks at all and all that, fine. This is not your gun. It's because it's still a Glock. It's not that much different than any previous Glock. Any of you who are looking for Glock to go away from being a Glock, well, you're going to be sorely disappointed. It's just refinements on what was already there. So there you go. I'm okay with Glock pistols. I'm okay with a lot of different guns. The only guns I absolutely loathe are H&K handguns and Sig Sauer P320s and P365s. Those guns I loathe. But I'm not a real big fan on the Walther modern 9mm handguns either. Now a Walther P90, P38 or P1 single stack, the old World War II era gun. I love that shit. H&K MP5, love that shit. But I don't like their handguns. So there we go. If you want one, get one. You won't be disappointed, I don't think, unless you happen to get a lemon. And keep in mind, Glocks are known for reliability over the years, but every once in a while you get a lemon. And with any manufacturer, remember this: don't think it's the end of the world if you buy a gun, any gun, whether it be expensive or cheap, and it doesn't work when you get it. Manufactured items are manufactured items, and sometimes there's a limit. Now, the cheaper they are, the more likely there is a chance of you getting a lemon. But Glocks are still in that mid-range price-wise. So, but are they perfect? No. You may get one where the tooling may be just about ready to wear out and need changing when you get it. And so you might get a lemon gun. It might pass initial testing, and then when you get it, you get 3 or 4 mags in, and then something happens. Just send it back on warranty or whatever, and ask for another gun or ask for a fix. Don't get too bent out of shape on shit. But this is a good gun. This is a solid gun. I would trust it with my life. That's the most you can say about it. Anyway, that's it. We will see you guys again another time. And here we go. The start of the 1,000 round Glock 19 Gen 6 shoot down. That was the first 2 mags. Now we're not going to do all the mags, but we're going to do this first target. Now we're on magazine number 4.
Where are you starting with?
Magazine number 4. Magazine number 6, it's a Metgar metal mag. Just like with generations 2 through 5, Gen 6 handles the Metgar metal Glock mags just fine. Magazine number 7. Magazine number 8, it's another Metgar metal Glock mag. And we're going to do another magazine of the Glock 19 Gen 6. Magazine number 9. Okay, magazine number 10. Failed the line, but it's one of these beat up 10 rounders, so I'm not going to fail the gun, I'm going to fail the mag.
What time we done?
Alright, we're on Magnus number 15 overall, and this is the third Metgar metal Glock mag. Number 16 and 17 were 24 longer stick mags. One was a OEM Glock and the other one was Pro Mag. Gun ran perfectly fine. So we're up to 17 mags overall. I'm going to run a little bit of, give it a little bit of a break and run a little bit of 6 hour P220 45 ACP. We're just going to keep it running.
Oh, it's half. Yeah, that one.
Here we go. Two more mags out of the 45, no problem. Alright, done 6 more mags on the Glock, brings us a total of 23 magazines. We're going to do 2 more on camera to bring it to 25 on, overall so far, and then we're going to take a break and fire some 40 out of the Smith & Wesson. And I dropped a mag. Alright, yeah, I dropped it. Failed to seat it. That was on me. Let's go for 2 more mags to get 5 magazines on the Glock Gen 6. And we'll just do this magazine change live.
Alright, here we go. That was magazine number 25. The round from it was dead center. I should have quit then. Anyway, that's it. You know, we're gonna go off camera for a while, shoot a little bit of a 40, and give the 9mm a break. And that's 40. We're gonna run more magazines out of the Glock. We're going to shoot at all the circle targets, and then when I give the gun a break to rest it, I will be shooting the rectangle target with the 40. I'm only going to capture the first, last. Magazine number 26. Alright, 26 mags, no hiccup. Alright, this is the 10th, going to be the 10th magazine on this target. 35 magazines in total. And after that, we're going to take a break and run a few mags through the 40 and then rectangle.
Yeah, I haven't chatted with you about that. Get that roll of skin. Roll of skin. That gun.
Boom. 35 magazines, no issues. We are back on the Glock 19 Gen 6. This will be magazine number 36. I'm not quite sure how many magazines I plan on target yet. We'll see. Magazine number 37.
You want to shoot some?
And 3 more mags. So we are up to 40 now. Alright, we're 42 mags completed and 43. And there it is. I've got 19 more magazines left and 2 more targets. The first target's going to get 9 magazines on it. The last target will get 8 magazines on it. I still have 5 more mags of 40 caliber to shoot too. But you know, we'll just do that whenever. Alright, so here we go. This is overall magazine number 44. We're going for the head. There we go, magazine number 44. We're going to go off camera for a little while, and then for the last magazine of the target, then we'll bring it back. We are a few rounds into magazine number 47, and we've got a dead trigger. I pulled the trigger and nothing went bang. I'm not even 100% sure if there's a round in the chamber. Let's find out. A live round, pulled it open, and a live round bounced out and onto the floor where I can't retrieve it. So we'll just have to just keep going and see what happens. I did recover the round. It looks like a soft primer. So we'll try that again. Alright, we got a single round in this strike. I'm going to say that was the ammo. We're going to resume magazine 7. Alright, there we go. Number 47. I'm going to call that one the ammos, light strike. Alright, we're on magazine number 50. I felt that was significant, so I'll turn the camera back on.
Finger okay? Yeah. Cool. What? Oh, no, it's
Yeah, there were no light strikes or any other issues on all the magazines after 47, so definitely that was an ammo issue with just that one round. We are about to shoot the overall 53rd magazine. This is the 10th one on this target. Let's go. And then after that, we're going to give it a little bit of a break and shoot some 40 for a little bit on this same target. And then we'll have a nice, fresh, clean target for the final magazines. So far, good. Alright, we've only got a minute and a half left with footage on this card, so I'm going to fire the first magazine on this target and the last magazine on this target. This is the final 9 magazines for the test. That will put us to a total of 1,011 rounds on the Glock 19 Gen 6. See you in a little bit. Alright, we've got one magazine left. This will put over the 15 rounder. When it gets done, it'll put us at 1,011 rounds. Done. 1,011 rounds. Glock 19 Gen 6. Pretty perfect.
Alright, that was the conclusion of the Glock 19 Gen 6 1,000 round burn down. 1,011 rounds to be exact. That was loaded into 63 magazines, which were a variety of capacities. Mostly it was 15 rounders and 17 rounders stock Glock mags, although there were several aftermarket mags in there with varying capacities. But mostly it was the 15 and 17 rounders. Ran great. During that session there was one light primer strike, which I'm going to chalk up to crappy reload ammo. That same batch of ammo the next time I went out had another light primer strike. And I had one failure to feed, and that was from a crappy mag. That's an old beat up used mag that causes problems every time I take it to the range. Good for training. But anyway, yeah, so that was it. And that 1,000 rounds, at the time I ran that, the gun was completely stock. I had only had it was the second day I had it, and I ran it completely stock sights, stock everything. The only additives I've made to this gun is upgrading the sights to some tritium front sight, blacked out rear, and the extended slide release catch. That's it. Everything else is still stock, and this gun runs great. I just recently, at the time of this filming, put it over 2,000 rounds the day before, and yeah, this gun has run like a champ. And that's all for this footage.